Hey guys, Rochelle here with Amethyst Ascension. If you are new here, welcome, and if you're returning, thank you so much for joining me again. So today's video is all about a topic that is close to my heart, okay? I want to talk about AI art. And before anyone clicks off of this video, assuming that they already know what I'm going to say, no, stop. This is not me telling anyone that they have to love AI, and it's also not me pretending that there aren't concerns around it. But oh my goodness, I am just so honestly exhausted by how black and white this conversation has become. According to the internet right now, you are either a pure ethical artist or some soulless machine monster destroying creativity. I just don't think reality is that simple. Because here's the thing. I was an artist long before AI ever existed. Okay, as a little girl, I was constantly creating things. I made furniture for my Barbie dolls. My sister and I would make up little skits and stories and adventures together. I was always imagining worlds, aesthetics, characters, environments. Creativity has always been part of how I moved through this life. Then I grew up, I got married, I had children, and became a stay-at-home mother. Honestly, I struggled with that transition emotionally more than people probably realized. So I needed something creative that belonged to me, so I wouldn't disappear into like depression while raising my children, losing myself entirely into motherhood. So many years ago, I learned desktop publishing and started a home business creating brochures, flyers, advertisements, and business cards using Microsoft Publisher, back when that was newer technology. And it gave me purpose again. It gave me creativity again. And it gave me identity again. Then I became an Avon lady. And eventually I moved into leadership and recruiting. I took courses in skincare and cosmetics. I became a beauty advisor. I trained people. I taught leadership classes. And even that was creative to me. Working with aesthetics, presentations, color, beauty, communication. Then eventually I moved into handcrafted jewelry, which I have shown on my channel. And I will put a couple of links down below so that you can see if you are interested. This wasn't just a tiny little quick hobby jewelry either. I made hand-sewn beadwork, bead embroidery, large, elaborate statement pieces. They were inspired by ancient civilizations and mythology and symbolism. Some of those pieces took well over 20 hours to sew by hand. I sold internationally on Etsy long before Etsy became what it is now, long before it became popular. I did arts and craft shows. My work was displayed in galleries and in the Women's Historical Society where I live for a few years. But jewelry making is expensive. The materials are expensive. And when the economy took a dump, like in the early 2000s, it became difficult. People stopped being able to afford large wearable art pieces like that. At the same time, years and years of detail, hand sewing, had started really catching up with my body, and my hands are just not what they used to be now. Sewing for long periods causes numbness, drawing hurts, even coloring in a coloring book for too long can make my hands start going numb, and just it's painful. That's why I'd even do the digital journaling versus like writing in a journal, because it just hurts my hands. So, and then I think of one of the reasons this conversation around AI hurts me so deeply. because people act like creators using AI have never created anything before. Just like we just skipped artistry altogether, you know? But I spent years physically creating with my hands. And when that chapter became harder financially and physically, I adapted again. I moved onto Second Life or into Second Life. I built a successful business creating digital clothing for virtual avatars before most people even understood digital creative economies. I did that for years. I trained creators, I ran blogs, I built communities, I created constantly. Eventually, the pace of that world became too exhausting for me, especially to maintain on a daily basis, so I stepped away from that. Then I found YouTube and the tarot community. And honestly, it became one of the deepest passions of my life. But even before tarot, I had always been drawn to ancient civilizations, symbolism, mythology, spirituality, storytelling, aesthetics like religion. Sorry about that. I had someone come to the front door. So, those themes were already living inside of my jewelry long before I ever even created a tarot deck. And it wasn't until years into my tarot journey that I finally started creating decks myself, even though the visions for them had already been living in my mind for a long time. Some of my early decks had no AI involved at all. And here we are now, which is why it feels incredibly dismissive when people reduce creators like me down to, well, she just typed words into a machine. Because no. What you are seeing now is the continuation of a lifetime of creatively adapting through different mediums, different technologies, different chapters of my life, different economies, and different physical abilities. The medium changed, but the creativity didn't. And honestly, one of the things that I keep hearing that AI is somehow destroying creativity or replacing artists. And I just don't fully agree with that. First of all, I'm an artist, okay, because I use AI art. Other people that use AI art are also artists. So there's not replacing other artists. It's other artists that are using it. But I think what AI has done more than anything is open doors, especially for independent creators, older creators, disabled creators, people without giant budgets, people without huge teams behind them. A deck that may have taken me 2 years before might now take me several months because I also have a history of this. I am very efficient. I'm a very focused individual, okay? I have ideas and I execute those, and it's always been like that my entire life. Not just because of AI, but anyways. That doesn't mean that the symbolism disappeared. The storytelling didn't disappear. The meaning didn't disappear. The artistic vision didn't disappear. It just means that the distance between imagination and execution became shorter. I honestly don't understand why efficiency automatically gets treated like the enemy of creativity, right? Artists have always adapted to new tools. Photography didn't destroy painting. Digital art didn't destroy traditional art. Desktop publishing didn't destroy books. Despite all this technology, people still deeply love handmade things. I love handmade things. I will still support other creators. I have always and always will. And I'm sure most people feel the same way. People still buy original printings. People still sew and sculpt and crochet and carve and create. Traditional artistry did not disappear. And I don't believe human creativity is disappearing now either. Now, does that mean that there's no concerns about AI? Of course not. I absolutely think that there are conversations worth having around like corporations, copyright, environmental impact, data centers, technology, and labor shifts. But what frustrates me is how shallow and morally superior some of these conversations become online. Because the truth is, almost everyone that is criticizing AI is already deeply participating in AI systems every single day. They use predictive text, spell check, filters that track their faces, beauty, uh, what do you call them? Beauty, like filters that track your face movements, like eyelashes. Um, Algorithms that run their feeds, platforms scanning updates or uploads, I should say, printing companies using automation, shipping companies using automated logistics systems. Every single YouTube video upload gets scanned through AI systems. Social media runs on algorithms. Streaming platforms consume enormous amounts of digital infrastructure. Modern life is already deeply entangled with AI and automation. And honestly, one of my biggest concerns isn't even AI art itself, it's the environmental impact of massive data centers in the digital world as a whole. But even that conversation gets oversimplified into AI art is bad. Meanwhile, people are streaming endless videos, scrolling social media for hours, using cloud storage constantly, gaming online, consuming digital content nonstop. This is a much larger conversation about modern digital life itself, okay? And I think what exhausts me most is not disagreement. It is the shaming, the moral superiority, the bullying, the pretending that this conversation is simple when it absolutely is not simple. Because the deeper that you look into this topic, the more complicated it becomes. This conversation touches on technology, fear, creativity, accessibility, economics, consumption, identity, disability, and change, and what it even means to be an artist in a rapidly evolving world. And I don't think that there are any simple answers, but I do know this. I refuse to let people erase a lifetime of creativity because my tools evolved. Okay? I refuse to let people reduce decades of artistry, storytelling, symbolism, business building, crafting, and imagination down to internet stereotypes. And I refuse to accept the idea that artists must remain frozen in one approved form of creation forever in order to be considered authentic. My creativity did not disappear. It adapted, it survived, it evolved. And I also want to talk about this idea that AI somehow invented stealing in art. Because honestly, human beings have been copying, borrowing from, inspiring each other, replicating, remixing, tracing, stealing, and reinventing art for as long as art has existed. Long before AI, artists learn from other artists. That has always happened. We learn from books and movies, music, fashion, architecture, mythology, nature, other people's work, our environments, our cultures, our experiences. I personally do not believe that there are many truly original ideas anymore in the absolute sense that people talk about online. I think human creativity is deeply connected to collective inspiration. We are constantly absorbing like colors and textures and stories and symbols and emotions, aesthetics and patterns and experiences. And then we interpret those through our own lens. That's what human beings do. Art schools literally teach people by studying the techniques and styles of other artists. Even throughout history, artists inspired each other constantly. Movements inspired movements, styles inspired other styles, stories evolved and got retold across generations and different cultures over and over again. And honestly, I think once art is released publicly into the world, it becomes part of the human culture and inspiration, whether people like that reality or not. Now, with that said, there is a difference between inspiration and direct copying. If someone intentionally steals another artist's exact work, if I can speak properly, and tries to pass it off as their own, I do absolutely understand why people would be upset with that. I'm upset with that, okay? But again, that is not an AI problem. That is a human ethics problem. Humans have been forging paintings, copying jewelry, plagiarizing books, and stealing designs, and copying tarot decks, and sampling music, and replicating handmade art for centuries. Technology did not invent that behavior. Humans brought that behavior into technology. Honestly, I think people oversimplify how AI actually works too. So a lot of people talk about AI generators like there's just some giant folder full of stolen paintings being cut apart and pasted together. But that's generally not how these systems work. AI learns patterns, relationships, textures, shapes, lighting, composition, and visual associations. Now, does that mean that there aren't valid legal and ethical conversations happening around data centers and copyright? Of course not. There absolutely are. And I think those conversations are important. But what I reject is this oversimplified narrative that every single creator using AI is automatically some unethical thief with no creativity of their own. Because honestly, that completely ignores the massive amount of human vision that still goes into creating meaningful work. And that literally affects all creators. People act like using AI means you just type 5 random words and suddenly a meaningful tarot deck appears out of nowhere. No, there is still symbolism, storytelling, editing, world building, aesthetic direction, vision, emotion, structure, and meaning, and intention behind what I personally create. The technology did not magically invent my imagination for me, okay? It simply became another tool through which I could express it, period. You know, I do want to make a future video talking about like the data centers and the environment because I do strongly, you know, believe in let's try to find a solution for these things because I do not personally see our society stopping using cell phones and using social media and stop watching movies and stop playing video games and stop doing medical imaging and no more banking, and all these things are affected also and run with the data centers and so much more, emailing and all online. It's like all in the data centers. And the data centers were also needing more before the AI even came into it. The AI has definitely pushed it in more, but I'm going to do a future video on what I can find out all the data centers are, using, and see if there's like other conversations that we can get into about maybe our own consumption, how we can start slowing down how much we're on social media or how much we consume daily or how many videos we upload or how much we stream and maybe download instead of streaming and, other answers, other solutions rather than just pointing fingers at people. Okay? Real solutions. All right. So thank you for spending this time with me, and I'm sending you my love always, truly.